Welcome once again, everybody, to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with my good buddy, Jamie Uyeyama. We got Greg Flamong also producing the show. Today, we're going to talk some O-line and D-line when it comes to spring practice and the battles there and what we expect to happen. We'll also take your questions. Before we do, wanted to mention our sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing, founded by ND alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches, from All-Americans to All-Pros and associates to CEOs. You're in great hands with ESQ's custom clothing. Whether you're looking for a perfect fitting suit, a standout sport coat, or a perfect tuxedo for weddings and galas, ESQ master tailors blend traditional hand stitching in each garment with Italy and England's best fabrics. Check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Once again, that's esqclothing.com. All right, before we get going, also wanted to mention it's a great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. You can go to the front page, click on the premium section, and sign up. Lots going on. We got spring practice just right around the corner. And then, of course, we have recruiting is going to be heating up, already is. We got some junior day visits. We got a lot of visits that'll happen during spring practice as well. So a lot of that going on. And of course, they'll have all the big visits in June as well, the official visits. So a lot going on here in the next few months. Also, if you watch us on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and like the channel. That certainly helps us, and will help you let you know when the content is there. So you'll always know when we have new content showing up. All right. I have to say, Jamie, I don't see any Team Canada there on you.
Well, I'm wearing my Canuck stuff, man. Like, hey, I'm always repping Team Canada. I'm always repping Team Canada. I'm one of these people, Mike, that I remember when, I mean, you can empathize with this for, growing up as a Notre Dame fan, and Notre Dame, if for a big game, like Ty Willingham maybe coaching, getting his ass kicked, and then I'm like, you know what? I don't care that they got their butt kicked. I'm still gonna rep Notre Dame tomorrow. I'm one of those people. So
all right.
I wore my Canada stuff all day yesterday. I still rep Team Canada. Tough one. Good one for the US, obviously. Connor Helbeck, what a game! What a game!
We should have had the deal where you had to wear the
like
USA stuff. Yeah.
Full.
We should have had that.
You should have. Hey, you didn't make the bet.
I missed my chance. I'm sorry. I screwed that up.
Yeah.
Well, it was a fun game, and it just I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up. I mean, it's just rare that this kind of thing happens. So we got to celebrate a little bit with this. It's just what it is. I
don't blame you. Yeah, no, it's okay.
All right, let's get into it, man. Let's start with O-line. And, this is going to be a fun season when it comes to the offensive line, because I really think you're going to see the group kind of take a big step forward. The interesting thing is going to be where everybody's going to line up and who starts. And we talked about it a little bit last week, Jamie, in that we don't expect Charles Jugasaw to practice much this spring. Probably going to be more of a summer activation, kind of like what we feel like with Quincy Porter. Probably be more of the summer where they really try and get him ramped up. That's going to be a golden opportunity for Sullivan Absher, Will Black, Matty Augustine, probably some others that are going to be out there battling. But first of all, I mean, what do you think would be the best lineup for this group going into fall camp? If you could pick your favorite lineup and the way it would look, what would it be for you?
So including Jugasaw. So let's say, assuming he's back then. Okay. To me, it would be Jugasaw at right guard, Lambert at right tackle, Ashton Craig at center, Anthony Knapp at left tackle, and then Will Black at left guard. But do I know? I notoriously can't stand predicting, because I know that probably Will Black will probably be the right tackle or something like that. Like it just usually ends up going that way. But I think that is right there. I just think whether it's Augustine or Black, and I know this sounds bad because we're like discounting. So I'm discounting Sullivan Absher, but I'm just really excited about both Augustine and Black, and I think one of those guys is gonna start. I just have a feeling that one of those guys is gonna do it, and I think there's more of an opportunity at guard, and because Black has already been working at guard, um, I think this is like a huge opportunity this spring for Black because he could step in and compete with the ones at guard, because Jugasaw's out. And if he does well enough, if he performs better than Sullivan Absher, that could put him in a position there when Jugasaw comes back, right? So, and maybe it's presumptuous to even assume that Jugasaw is going to be back and ready to start and stuff too. But I I think I'm just going to bet on him until we definitely know that he's not going to be there.
I've seen a lot of different ways that this is going to go. And there's a couple of ways to look at it too. Sometimes offensive line coaches like to take the inexperienced guy and put him right next to a very experienced guy. So you could put, as you mentioned, Black at left guard and Knapp over there. Or you could, at that point, try and focus on how do we get the best combination? Because sometimes you need a side that you go to on your short yardage. You need a side that you know that you can count on to get your 2 and 3 yards every single time. So sometimes it may make sense to put, say, Lambert next to Knapp at left guard, and then you'd have the opportunity to have Will Black out there with And so there's a lot of ways to look at it. I don't know what makes the most sense though. I think because if you expect Black to eventually play tackle, and a lot of people think he'll be the left tackle next year, does it make more sense, Jamie, to let him play some right tackle, kind of get used to the feel of that kind of thing, that kind of speed rush and bend and kicking out and all that type of stuff? Or does it make sense to play him inside so he has some protection? He doesn't have to, face so much adversity out there being one-on-one. You have some protection inside playing guard. I see two ways of looking at it. What do you think?
Yeah, and I also think that it would probably benefit him, or just anyone in general, to get those reps at tackle in the spring, this spring. So it's like maybe he isn't running with the ones at guard, and he's getting that look, or at least a partial look at left tackle at with the twos, right? So I think one of the things is that there's a million Notre Dame fans who have already wanted to move Anthony Knapp inside for basically more than a year. And the thing is that that's all well and good, and people can think that. Well, you have to have somebody else that's better than him at left tackle in order to do that. And so in order to do that and show that that's the case, you probably need someone like Black or Augustine, maybe, right? Like to, or maybe even Lambert, to work at left tackle at some point. And then, then if say Black is with the twos or Augustine with the twos at left tackle or whatever, and one of those guys is there and they're like, wow, they're really like showing something here. Well, then you can say, okay, I watch him in one-on-one pass rush. He just handled, like, he did a great job against Boubacar Traore and whatever. So, well, now we're going to give him a shot, and now we're going to look at Knapp inside, and then you can do that from there. I think that would be, I mean, to me, it's always one of these things where I think one of the reasons why Gerby Lambert got the chance at right guard and was able to start right guard was because he looked so good at right tackle. Like he was someone that stood out right away when we went and saw in August. Mike Lambert looked like, oh, he is taking a jump, and he looks like the future is now for him. He's going to be a starter quality player now. So that's what allows them to give him a look inside. So they've already looked at Black inside. Maybe now is the time to say, okay, well, now we want to look at him at tackle in the spring. That's what the spring's for, is to experiment and to take a look at that. So I think if that's how they view it, where Black is the future at left tackle, or Augustine, or whoever's the future at left tackle, you want to get those guys as many reps there as possible and get that look. And then, you can still work them inside as well, but let them prove that first.
Yeah, it's a tough situation because there's so many different options that you could go with here. That's a good thing. In the years before, JB, we'd be like, how do you even find five? So
Yeah.
they're in a really good situation when that comes around. And so, let me ask you this question. Maybe this is a reach, but do you think that they haven't put him out there because they have faith in Styles Prescott as the next guy? He's been there pretty much the entire time, and they could have put Augustine there, they could have put Black there, they could have put Owen Strebig there, they could have put a lot of people there, but it's been Prescott the whole time. He's still not quite 300 pounds based off of what we see, but again, the weights, who knows whether those are legit or not. But to me, maybe they like Styles Prescott, and that's why he's there. But I think it'll be interesting to see how it all lines up, because I think, like you mentioned, if you're going to do something, now's the time to experiment with it. Unfortunately, we're never going to know. We're not going to get enough access to practice to probably ever really see what's going on. I don't think we may see it because they do some drills early. The O-line does. A lot of times they'll do half line and stuff like that early. So we do get a look at some of that. But even then, it's kind of hard to say, oh, this is what it's going to be. But we noticed that when Knapp was going to start at left tackle, all of a sudden we thought, oh, he's not a serious thing. And then we started noticing in half line, he was the guy that was out there. And so we're like, I guess it's going to be him. And sure enough, it was. So, and I do think it's important to, if you're going to rep somebody somewhere, you got to have the same continuity with the same people. So I don't think that they'll probably be bouncing them just to kind of fool us or anything like that in the beginning of practice or that type of thing. I think the way it is probably the way it's going to be. But again, it's time for experimentation versus we're trying to hone in exactly what we're going to be. And there's so many guys, like I mentioned Prescott, and he's a guy that certainly has been in there and we've seen, but then we've seen good things from Matty Augustine, as we've mentioned, and Joe Otting, when he was healthy, Jamie, he played well in the 1.5 games he was healthy. The other games he was not healthy and he didn't look good, but that's what happens when you get injured. And so, Ashton Craig is the bigger guy, certainly right now, 6'5" at 308, although they have Otting at 6'4", 306, but and Craig has the more reps, but based off of what I saw with Otting, it wasn't like there was much of a drop off. Do you think that there's much of a chance to challenge there? And with Sullivan Absher, he has probably more reps than Black and Augustine, but I don't want to speak for you. For me, I just look at those guys when they get in the game, and you can usually tell when a guy is really close to being somebody. And when I watched Black and I watched Augustine, when they would come in and mop up duty, they looked like they were the next two that were obvious. And while Absher may be a slight bit more consistent at times, you could see that their athleticism was off the charts and a different level than what Sullivan Absher had. So how do you see this all unfolding?
Yeah, well, I think this spring is the perfect example for guys like Otting and guys like Absher to kind of establish and say that it's their job, right? Like, and they want that job and they're going to take it, because Otting is going to have this whole spring basically, because I don't expect Craig to, if he practices at all, it'll be extremely limited. Like he will not be doing team stuff, right? So that gives him a chance to be with the ones pretty much the entire time. And if Otting shows that he's good enough, that's the kind of thing where they say, well, maybe we want to look at Ashton Craig at guard, and we want to, say put him in the mix there because we feel good enough about Otting. Or Absher looks so good, then that's where you say, well, okay, we don't want to look Will Black. Maybe we don't have to worry about him here, because we're going to make sure that he's really trained for tackle, because Absher has taken that jump and he is that guy. And to me, that a perfect example of that is a guy like Josh Lugg, who I think when he first started getting in as a starter, and obviously he's not a perfect player. He wasn't an NFL player, right? But like he was someone though that got better like over the course
Yeah.
of time. And by his last year, when he was in the right spot, I think at that guard spot, he was a good player, right? And was like a quality starter. Not like, like an all-American or anything, but was a quality starter. So do you take that jump to be that? And frankly, the level of consistency there is that to the point that it can't be denied that you have to say, like, let's look these guys at tackle. And I think also too, I'm glad you brought up Prescott because it's so easy for someone because he was hurt his first year, right? He was hurt his first year, pretty much missed the whole entire year. And then he was hurt for some of his second year too. Well, that doesn't mean it's over for him, right? Like,
Yeah.
And just because Black and Augustine, people are excited about them and they should be, but it doesn't mean that Prescott isn't right there, or like you said, that they don't feel a certain way that he can be at this level, right? So I think this is a really interesting spring for all of those guys because that could be the thing where this spring could basically determine whether or not Styles Prescott is going to be a starter at Notre Dame eventually, even if it's not now, or he'll never start at Notre Dame. And then it's going to be these guys pass him because that's kind of how it works, like, right? Like you can see, It's like Tosh Baker had all of these chances where it was like, well, he's next in line, but he never did enough to show anything that he could be that next guy when his time came, right? So, and then Knapp went and took it from him, right? And that is always how it works, right? With the offensive line is that someone can be there and can jump you. So
yeah,
it's going to be really interesting to kind of see those back half, the guys who were with the 2s and 3s, and which of those guys kind of emerge there, because it's even one of these things where Cam Herron, who you don't want to say like, I mean, I thought he looked good as a freshman when I watched him in camp and stuff in spring, and he gained weight, which I like to see. That's awesome. But now it's like, okay, well now Sullivan Garvin's coming. Well, now you basically have this whole year to show that, hey, I'm separated over top of, like, Garvin is not going to pass me. Or, oh, hey, well, now we got to look at Garvin at guard because Herron's going to be our center of the future, right? Like, that is basically what he's got to do this whole year. And that's kind of what spring and all that competition is all about. And I love that too, especially like I love that with line play. I think is like really, really essential. It's development, and these guys that you don't think might not even play a big role this year, but it's like this spring is big for the future.
Yeah, I think it's big for a lot of guys. I mean, I don't see like a Devin Houston really playing much at this point, but he is a junior. My guess is he's looking to get a degree and then move on. Chris Tarrick is probably in that role as well. Kind of same class, and a guy who will come in probably at second string at some point, and we'll see whether that ends up being the case. But he's fighting for that second team spot with everybody else that we've mentioned. Black, Strebig, of course. I think he'll be in the mix there at guard as well. And then we talked about Matty Augustine. What will he be? Where will he be in all of this? And I keep just looking at the list, and Otting's a junior as well. So let's say Ashton Craig plays this year and then is gone. It's going to be a battle then between Otting and Cam Herron as to who will be the center next year. And so it's kind of a solidify your spot here, make sure you know where you're going. So, Peter Jones is another guy that I'd probably put in the Devin Houston part of situation where I just don't see there's an opportunity for him to play at this point. I don't want to count him out, but I just don't really see where he's going to fit compared to the guys they have on the roster now and guys coming in. We haven't got to the freshmen yet, but those are kind of the guys that it's make or break. You either have to nail down a second position, a second team spot, or you're probably done. Your chances of playing at Notre Dame are about zero, moving forward. I mean, I'd say a lot of those guys are in that role, and maybe even Prescott too. Maybe even Prescott is in that too, because there's going to be a lot of guys coming in that are trying to land that left tackle spot, and maybe Black plays left guard or right guard this year and then moves to left tackle, or maybe he plays right tackle this year and moves to left tackle. That's possible, but I think that just to make sure, you have to solidify to the coaching staff, I'm one of those guys. I'm definitely a second string guy. Otherwise, probably not going to happen for you. Jamie, when you look at the freshmen, yeah, most of the guys are in. Sullivan Garvin is here. He's competing. Grayson McHugh is here. Tom is here. Do you think is this just a learning situation for them? You don't anticipate any of those guys making a move or pushing for a number 2 spot, do you?
No, not this year. I just think where they're at with how many guys they have now, especially too, because ever since they expanded to 105 and they've like kept even more, like Notre Dame's got like 20 scholarship offensive linemen. That means basically like the 6 freshmen, obviously the 2 guys, Ben Nichols and Gregory Patrick, like those guys coming in the summer, like no chance. Like it's not going to happen for them, either of them. But even with McKeo, Tom, Tyler Merrill, Garvin, who are already there, it's so tough. It's like we talked about like Prescott and these other guys. It's like, well, it's a big time for them. It's like, well, they're going to give those guys every chance to show whether or not they can do it. So in order for like McKeo to be like, well, I got to be like the left, he has to just really like show right away that he's special and that he's ready and he's far more advanced as possible. And I think for McKeo, who's more physically developed than Tom right now, but both those guys need obviously a level of physical development there, but they also need technical development. They've also only played McKeo's only played 2 years of offensive line. Tom's only played 1. So those guys, I guess they could. You never want to rule out that someone could be Joe Alt, but Joe Alt also had, we always mention, right? His dad was always there, and he always had this base there that was the and he was just one of these people that was just waiting to take off physically, and it just happened for him. I think he is like a total unicorn. You just don't get guys like that.
Well, and he had opportunity too. You know what I mean? So like these guys aren't going to have that opportunity that he had, where it's like they didn't have any other choice but to put him in. So he got lucky in that's the situation. These guys are going to have to separate themselves in practice. They're just going to have to. So, but I think McHugh and Tom, I like both those guys. I think both of them have something, and it would not surprise me if both of them ended up playing quite a bit at Notre Dame. I really wouldn't. You mentioned Garvin and Merrill. Merrill, I think, is going to have to lose some weight. Get in a little bit better condition. But I'm sure they're working on that now. I love the fact, and I've mentioned this before, Jamie. I love the fact that you're now getting guys that are 6'6", 305 coming in the door for the most part. Some even bigger than that. I like that fact because you don't have to add a bunch of weight to these guys and wait. Now, Notre Dame's roster is such that you can do that with a guy like McHugh and Tom, in that you've recruited so well that you can take some of these, what we would call developmental guys, and, because their ceiling is so high, you don't need them to play right away. That hopefully by year 3, they're exactly what you think that they can be. And it'll probably be year 3 before any of those guys play. And I'm going to guess probably before any of those freshmen play would be year 3, just because the thing seems pretty packed right now with quality talent and everything. Big year for Owen Strebig, you think?
Yeah.
Big spring.
It's the exact same kind of thing too, right? Where he's there, and it's not like, if you shouldn't count somebody, he's only been on campus for a year. So you don't count somebody out who's been on campus for a year. But I think it's pretty much consensus that Black and Augustine were further ahead of him in their development than him. So he's playing catch up. And there's other guys that they just brought in where all of a sudden, if they say like, okay, Streebig, if let's just say they move him to guard and he's going to be a guard, then it's like, well, okay, Tyler Merrill's there. It's like he has to be like this much above Tyler Merrill, or else they're going to be like, it's already pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to take the guy they got the extra year. Like that is how it works, right? And Notre Dame's just recruiting at a level right now where the next guy can just pass you, and it can happen. And obviously they've done that for years too. That has always kind of happened, but it's even more so now that it's happening. And then also too with like NIL and all that kind of stuff, and how much guys are going to get and how much it's going to cost to keep them. It's like one of these things. If you would have predicted, say last year at safety, Mike, that like Jadon Blair, if Ethan Long wasn't as good as he was as like a freshman, Jadon Blair is probably still on the roster. They're probably like, okay, yeah, we still want to have him, but they're like, wow, Ethan Long is like a lot better than Blair right now.
Yeah.
And so
that didn't surprise me, by the way.
Yeah. And
I always thought Jadon Blair was a better receiver than safety. He just didn't have the natural instincts physically and as a hitter. You know, he just, a guy that size should be more physical and you know, I just thought he was a better wide receiver. He just didn't seem to have the defensive mentality that you need to be. Great athlete, don't get me wrong. You know, great athlete, but we've seen that before with a lot of guys coming in that are very athletic, but they just don't have that. Like Brandon Logan, to me, when you watched his film, defensive minded. You know, you could tell that he wanted to hit people and he wanted to be physical, and so we'll just, you know, we'll see. We'll get to the DBs here in a couple weeks, but or actually next week. Let's get to the fun part here, Jamie. Your topic, which is the D line. Man, when I look at these numbers, I mean, look at all these numbers of players: Tion Gray, Boubacar Traore, Christopher Burgess, Francis Brew, Logan Thomas, Keon Keeley, Ebenezer Uotade, Brennan Vernon, Dom Hulak, Cole Mullins, Rodney Dunham, Jason Almier, Tiki Hola, Elijah Hughes, Sean Savillano, Davian Dixon, Armel Mookum, Elijah Gordy Solstad, Joe Reef, and Bryce Young. I mean, that's a lot of D linemen, dude.
That's a lot of D linemen, yeah.
That is a lot. And again, this is where the 105, I think, helps Notre Dame. But that's a good thing, because if you're going to be strong in the trenches like Notre Dame needs to be, you want to oversign O-line and D-line, because as we've seen, sometimes when it comes down to the NIL part of things, you got to let a guy like Wagner go, because you can't pay him. He's not going to give you enough productivity that, you know, demands his kind of NIL number that you can't find in somebody young. And so it's important to make sure that you have these bodies here, Jamie, because you're going to lose some good guys. Next year, they're going to lose some guys. You know, Joe Otting, if he doesn't win, he's going to have a pretty big NIL deal, I'm sure, to go somewhere else, because he's already proven. And when you look at what Notre Dame's O-line have done since leaving, they're one of the very few positions that have actually excelled. Everybody else outside that left rarely becomes much of anything. But when it comes to O-line, those guys can seem to find a way to start and do very, very well, as we saw last year with the three that went to Tennessee, Indiana, and Nebraska. All three of those guys played well. And so I expect that Notre Dame, because of the coaching they get and the quality and talent, a lot of your second string is going to get picked off every year, and the same thing's probably going to happen at D-line. But, man, when I look at this, Jamie, I love the size that they have, you know, adding, you know, when you look at the situation and you add somebody like Tion Gray, I love that. You know, as much as Donnie Heinisch was a good player, he was a little undersized, but I think Francis Brew will be somebody who can easily do what he does and maybe even a little bit better. And so, and you get Anya back. I mean, this is about as good as you could possibly hope for when it comes to heading into this season. How do you see these guys lining up? If you had to put together your, you know, depth chart, and I know you hate doing this, but if you had to put it together, your top 8 that would come in, how do you see that unfolding at this point?
Well, I think at defensive tackle, I mean, yeah, it is crazy how at one point it was like, well, they have Elijah Hughes coming back, and it was like it didn't, you didn't know about Anya, and you weren't sure about
Yeah.
what's going to happen in the portal. Um, I think obviously Brew and Gray are going to be in the two deep there. Um, and I would expect Brew to start, and I'll probably be like Brew and Anye, and then Gray and Hughes. I think will be the top four at defensive tackle. And that's a pretty good top four. And then I think you know at end it's obvious that Bubakar and Bryce Young are going to be like the top two guys there. Keeley, and then from there it becomes whether or not um, is Rodney Dunham. Do you feel good enough to put him actually like in the two deep, or is he just going to be a guy who can maybe just be a situational pass rusher, and that's it? Because I think there's zero chance that he's going to redshirt. Like I think he's going to play this year, but it just how much can he play? And then really it's going to kind of depend on right now, because if you're Logan Thomas, are you just a situational pass rusher? Like if even saying like his, it's wrong on the thing with his weight, but he's
Size,
220 pounds. He's still undersized.
undersized.
He's still going to be undersized no matter what. But there are some guys who can play effective at undersized. Can he play that? And if not, then is it going to be Hulak? Is it going to be Rafe? Where do you see that? I think that Burgess is going to move inside. I think if he's not already established there, like I would be shocked. Like he's just too big, and I think it's just one of these things. It's just like a better fit for him. And to be honest, I think like guys like Burgess and Cole Mullins and Mookum, those are guys that I think could probably be in a two deep in a lot of other years for Notre Dame.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
They might even push to get in it this year, right? And I think that Burgess, I think, is someone that I would say that's someone who you're really going to watch this year and see whether or not, because if he can make that jump, because he has a chance, I think, to develop into an elite player. It's just like, is it his time now where he's going to approach that? Everybody saw with like Bryce Young last year that it's like, well, he made a jump, but not the jump that everybody kind of thought. Well, he was going to make this huge of a leap. No, he had a good year, but not the kind of year that people wanted to see. People wanted to see him become like an All-American. And it's probably more likely that it's going to happen for him this year. He's going to take another step this year where he's going to get closer. And now, it's whether or not some of these other guys can really step up. And man, I just love the competition here.
Yeah, it's going to make everybody better.
And I didn't even mention Sean Saviano, which I think he is someone who's really in the mix. We didn't mention Devion Dixon either. Like I really think it's at defensive tackle. There are guys who are going to start out on day one of spring with the fours that could maybe get into the rotation. And that just is not something that happens very often. And, it's going to be tough for, these guys to really like show out and really, make an impact. And it's going to be about the level of consistency guys have. I bet that I know that obviously Charlie Partridge has worked with defensive linemen in college and with all different levels for years and years. I can't imagine he's ever had this many number of guys.
Yeah, he's got to be
entire room
loving it. Yes.
Yeah, and it's just going to be about which guys kind of like take to it and really make the jump.
It's crazy when you think about it because, I guess we look at the situation and we say, well, is Burgess the fifth guy coming in? Is it Savillano? Is it Dixon? Is it, who knows? Who knows is going to be the next guy that's coming in? Because a lot of times they will play up to, the third string interior wise, depending on how well the game is going. But you got Mookum, and the crazy thing is, I don't think people understand the reason Mookum is back is because Partridge watched his film and really liked him, thought he had a lot of potential. That's the whole reason Mukum is back. So we've already heard really good things about Dixon emerging. Sevillano, when he's in there, plays well most of the time. It's just consistency. We've both been big fans of Cole Mullins. Then you look at guys like Dom Hulak, who plays with his hair on fire, and so it will be interesting to see where it all ends up. Is Dom Hulak, does he become kind of the guy that comes in and is behind Boubacar Traore, or is he more of a guy that's going to spell Keon Keeley as the third string guy? Because you also have, as you mentioned, as we've talked about, they also like Cole Mullins, and every time Cole has been in there, he's played well. And a lot of people think that Mullins will move in as a defensive tackle, but you got a bunch of guys there already. So, maybe his best role is kind of backing up Keon at this point and backing up Bryce Young. I don't know, but it's a good problem to have, and one Notre Dame has not had in a very long time. So you want to talk about competition. As crazy as it's going to be on offensive line, I think it's going to be even crazier on defensive line. This is going to be, these guys this is pecking order, and whether you have a chance to even play here at Notre Dame. So I'll be surprised if 4 or 5 of these defensive linemen that are on the roster are there next year. I'll be very surprised, because it's just, you'll have more talent coming in, and some of the young guys will, pass some of these older guys, I would think, at the end of the year. So we'll have to see what happens. I'm excited though, Jamie. D-line, I've never seen it like this. I've been doing this a long time, never seen them have this kind of depth and talent. Never. It's just never been this way. Offensive linemen, I think the talent is there, definitely, to be as good as some of these others. I wouldn't say the experience is there at this point, but I think the talent is there to be really, really talented. And I think the depth is there, that if they have the unfortunate crap that we've had the last 2 years of guys going out, you're still going to have guys that can come in and play meaningful, good, solid minutes for you. And I would say maybe even better this year than last year and the year before. Like the guys that would come in at 6, 7, and 8 at offensive linemen, I think are going to be better than the guys that would came in 6, 7, 8 last year and the year before. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I guess it's tough because you look at that 2024 and you had Coogan and Rocco come in, and they already had starting experience. So I guess from that way, it's different. But if we're going to say going into it, there's 6 guys returning with starting experience this year on the offensive line, and none of those guys are Will Black or Matty Augustine, who we both think could be good enough to start this year. Like that is, it's on the table. So I think from that perspective, yeah. And then also too, Rocco Spindler, I don't expect him to get drafted. Like, I think he had a good college career, but I don't expect him to get drafted. Coogan, maybe like a late round pick or something like that. It could happen. Matty Augustine might be a first round pick. Will Black might be a first round pick. I'm not saying it's going to happen for sure, but it's like, that's their ceiling. Their ceiling was much higher than those guys. So I think from that perspective, yeah, like it is different. And then even too, like when we're talking about like guys like Makio or something like that, like I don't think Makio is going to be ready to play this year, but maybe he is someone that by the end of the year, we're talking about him just like we're talking about Will Black now, right? And all of that, like where he's next. And that's the thing. And I think that's always going to be the thing, right? Is you always want to have those guys. Well, who's next? Like how Gerby Lambert. Okay, well, now he's next. Well, then he came in and started, right? So, and I do think there's just more guys because as much as like Emil Wagner was like, he was a good player for Notre Dame. There are guys there with like higher ceilings than him now. And like losing Shrouth is a big deal. He's a stud. Yeah. We talked about, we praised him, and he's should be picked probably higher than he's going to go. And I think he's going to, be probably a day 2 pick, but they still are going to have quality guys there. Like if you just said, well, Charles Jagusaw is going to step in for Shrouth, that's a decent trade. Like you're going to be okay with that as long as Juggus is healthy.
Yeah. All right, Jamie, we're going to get some questions here. I'm excited. Like I just want to say, I am very excited about the O line, D line. I think it's going to be a fun year to follow. And I think, as you mentioned, the experience helps in Rocco and Coogan, and you're going to get some growing pains with any new starter. When Alt came in, he struggled. When Knapp came in, he struggled. Everybody, Lambert struggled. Everybody, first time starters, going to struggle. The good news is you have the 5-6 games to start the season where you can get through those growing pains and you're going to have a better player. That's why I think, as you mentioned, Augustine and Black have a real chance to start, because that you can let them kind of take their licks, as you will, in those first 6 games and struggle a little bit, learn and build on your technique and learn from your playing experience, that by the time it becomes a real tough game, you're going to have 6 starts under your belt and a lot of experience, and the level of talent is much greater than what you would have if Rocco and Coogan came in at that point. So excited to see what this all unfolds and how it ends up. All right. Questions. What are your thoughts on the 3 quarterbacks they've zeroed in on for 2027? And who's the one that Jamie and you want the most? I'll start with you, Jamie.
Well, we actually were just not tweeting, but texting about this offline the other day. And we're both big, wonderful Mons fans. Like I really like him. He'd be my guy out of that group. I mean, I think the guys they've kind of honed in on, I think they're all pretty good, but I think that he's the guy I think who has the highest upside, and he's also just a little bit different than some of the other guys that they already have too. So with that would be my choice.
He's mine too. I will say I'd be happy with any of the 3. What I think you want is, because you don't know what you're going to get yet in Gerard and Noah Grubbs, is you have to hope one of those guys is a real high floor guy. You got to hope one of those guys is your high floor guy. And then if you take a wonderful Mons, he's the high ceiling guy, but also pretty good floor. I like Camden Lapati. I think he's a really good player. He's got a good arm, throws a ball well, throws a deep ball well. I think he's really, really talented. And I like Blake Roscoff too. I like both those guys. So in the past, I would say I wasn't as high on some of the guys that they recruited before. And I'd had like a pecking order of I really wanted this guy over the other guy because I don't really like that guy. In this situation, I'd say I like all 3, but I do think Mons has the most upside at this point. And so you got to go with that if you can get it. All right, let's see what else we got here. Lots of offers popping up for 2027. Who do you think are the top 3 realistic players at quarterback, running back? This is just really too hard to say at this point. I don't think even Notre Dame knows right now who the top 3 running backs, O-line, tight end positions are. I think they have a pretty good understanding, but I don't think that they really know for a fact because, you're going to do some more research and that type of thing. I mean, me personally, I really like Noah Roberts. I think he's a really good player. I really like him, and I hope he's in the class. That's probably my top guy besides the spell. I would say he's my top guy, but I don't know whether that's Notre Dame's. I do think he's very high on that list for sure. We know when it comes to tight ends, Seneca Driver and Jackson Dollar are really high, but they've been recruiting a lot of these other guys now, and I think that they're starting to rise up the board the more they learn about him. So I don't know. I think that's a little too early point to say. Anything you want to add to that, Jamie?
Yeah, I would say for me too, because there's some of the guys that I haven't watched every single one of them yet because I'm still finishing up. I'm gonna do the 2026 ISD Fab 50 is gonna come out here in the next little bit, so I'm like finishing that up right now, and then I'm gonna watch all the new offers that I haven't got to yet. So I don't want to like throw people in there. Then I'm like, well, I didn't watch this guy yet. So, but I will say, I think at tight end though, like Dollar and Driver, who have been on their list for a long time. Both those guys have, stood out to me for a long time. Like they
Yeah.
really stood out to me, and I think I like those guys. I think like I haven't dug into the receivers enough to say yet. And I don't know. I think it's one of those things to be like who's actually realistic. It's like
Yeah.
some of these guys, it's like, you know how you always say, Mike, don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. Some of these guys haven't been to campus yet. So
Mhm.
a lot of guys talking up big, and then they put out a top 8 and Notre Dame's not in it or something,
Yeah.
right? So let's see what happens.
Well, and that goes reverse too. Some guys come in thinking they're not very interested in Notre Dame, and then all of a sudden they show up and they're
Yeah.
like, "Holy cow! Yeah, I know this is they're right up there now." So it's too early to tell until these guys come back on campus. We'll see that in March. We'll see that in April, and then of course we'll see it in June for sure. But we'll see that in March and April. You're going to see a lot of these guys come and come to practice, and Jamie, that's what they really want to see. I mean, part of it is, yeah, the campus is nice and don't the facilities look good and all this type of stuff, but they want to see how their position coach is going to coach. And let's be honest, most of these defensive players, they haven't even seen these guys coach. They haven't even met them in person yet because they're all brand new. You got, other than Codlin now, you have a brand new corners coach, you got a brand new linebackers coach, and a brand new defensive line coach. So it's hard to say on that side who they like and who's really going to like them at this point. All right. Posted this last week, but too late. Setting aside CJ Carr, who are the 3 players that ND cannot afford to lose to injury this season? For me, I'd say one of the top ones is certainly Boubacar Traore. I think that would be a terrible thing for the offense, or for the defense if that were to happen. I do think that would really hurt them for sure. And I'd say probably Drake Bowen because we're not sure when King's going to be back. We don't know when King is going to be 100% healthy, and so that would hurt. And then of course for me, I would say probably Leonard Moore. They have some good young corners, but Leonard Moore's he's an eraser. So those would probably be my 3. Anything from you?
I mean, definitely Traore for me. Like just because of everybody else at the position, I think that is the position where they have the least proven depth out of any other position. It's not to say they might be able to recover fine, but they have just in terms of proven depth, it's the least amount. And I would have probably said Bowen too, but I do think like they still have talent there. Like it's not to say like even if like let's just say they went into the season and it was Osbury, Sneed, and Madden Fermo as their top 3. I don't know that Madden Fermo might not just be ready to a rocket ship ready to take off. And even with Leonard Moore, because I would 1,000% a couple years ago said Ben Morrison. They cannot lose Ben Morrison or else the season's over. It's not going to happen. Well, then Leonard Moore came in and stepped in for him and was like unbelievable right away. So I would agree with you on Moore, but then also point to the fact that I don't know that like Jaden Sanders or Mark Zachary or something like that, or whoever is going to be like ready to step in and be like just really play at a really, really high level. Do I think they'll get it to more level? Probably not. But I do think that, is something I would say, it's hard because I think like as I was going through this and I read this before, Mike, and I was thinking about it. I don't know if like they're just in a position now where, like you said about the offensive line, the next guy's in. I'm excited and I actually want to see those guys.
Yeah,
so
I hear you.
So if like Gerby Lambert get hurt, I'd be like, wow, that's a big loss. But that means Matty Augustine's going to start, and I think he might be really, really good. So I don't really know. Like I guess if I would just probably just pick those guys that you picked, just because I think those are three studs, like just absolutely like
Yeah.
big time players, and it'll be hard to replace them. But I don't know that they won't be able to replace
Yeah.
them.
The reason I mentioned Bowen is because I've seen under Marcus Freeman, under Al Golden, um, and certainly under Max, um, third year starters at linebacker tend to just be ass kickers. I mean, they just do. I mean, this could go all the way back to Manti Te'o, who I felt was pretty average until his last year. I thought he was solid. I didn't think he was a great player. And his last year, he just absolutely blew up. You look at um, uh, who's the guy at the
JD Birch,
Falcons?
JD
Yeah,
Bircham. Yeah.
exactly. You look at a lot of those guys that maybe you're not like, oh, this guy's great,
Kaiser as
but
well. Yeah.
yeah, Kaiser's another one. Yes, that just that third year, it's you know, they just seem to things really click mentally, and so I just have a feeling Drake's going to have a monster year, and because he's kind of the only one that I feel is healthy, although I'm not sure he's 100% healthy as Matt has said, but I think he will be. That uh, he's going to take off and be the one thing that you can count on. Sneed's always been kind of up and down. Osbury's been a little undersized, but I think he's going to be pretty good. Madden, I have a lot of faith in. It'll be interesting to see if Madden does what KVA did in year two. That will be the interesting thing, because KVA was good in last year or 2 years ago, but last year I felt he played much, much better. And it's just a tough position to play. It's probably, I think, the hardest position to play in all of college football. As far as on the defensive side, there's just too much to know, too much to learn, and so that's why I would have picked him. All right. Is there a story or stories you want to hear this spring serve as an indicator about Indy having a great year this season? What do you think there, Jimmy?
To me, it's like the receiver position. We talked about all of, like the talent there and how there's all these guys and there's going to be a lot of competition there. Well, who's going to separate there? And are there enough guys separating? Like, is Mylan Graham all of a sudden we're going to hear like, oh wow, like he is something like, and that because that to me changes the ceiling of the offense. As good as I think like Great House and I know that Great House and Faison are going to be good. So is it
Yeah.
Graham or Burris or whoever, and it's going to do that, and then you're like, wow, that kind of changes things there. Or like James Flanagan or something at tight end, you're like, well, he is definitely the starter, and he has looked amazing. So it's that kind of stories, right? With those guys that I think that we anticipate being good, but it's just how good, and it's like what kind of springs they have. Because I think like last year's a perfect example of like think people were hopeful about Tay Johnson and thinking that, yeah, he could be pretty good and he might be someone who pushes to start this year. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, like he is really going to be something. And I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but he's going to be special. And then all of a sudden it just, carried on from there. Right. So that's what you want to have, those Tay Johnson kind of guys in the spring, as many of those guys as possible.
That's why, I think if Mickens were there, we would say that about him for sure. He is going to be that this year, but we just don't know because we don't know how this guy's going to coach. And that's no disrespect to him. It's just we haven't seen it yet. We haven't seen it on the field. So we see that it's hard to really predict. All right. You mentioned a while back you being really excited for this upcoming year. This was before Washington and Mickens left. With that said, are you still feeling similar? Has your excitement levels come down, or do you still feel really good? I still feel really good. I do. I think the fact that Chris Ash these people well, I think that's a big part of it. He knows what they're capable of, and he knows how he can communicate with them. I think that's a big part of it. I'm sure I don't want to speak for Jamie, but I know he liked Al Washington as a coach. But I have a feeling he thinks Partridge could be easily as good, if not better. So I think the talent is so good, and the experience coming back and the depth is so good that it'd be really hard to screw this up. I just think so.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for you, but I think it'd be hard to screw it up.
I think it's gonna be very hard to screw it up. I think it's just one of these things like Leonard Moore is not gonna get worse Like that isn't happening. We've just already seen there's too much experience and talent that has already played at a high level, that in order for them to, you'd have to have multiple people take steps back for it to be bad. And I don't see that happening. And also too, like the guys that they hired, I think too, if you just look at them like on its own and just said, well, they hired Aaron Henry to replace Mike Mickens, you're like, well, that's a good hire. And then you're like, well, they brought in Partridge to, well, that's a good, like, Brian John Reed, you'd say, man, these are great hires. Like these are guys with track record of developing guys with production and all this. And yeah, it's all got to fit together, but it's just, there's no reason to think that they're going to make these guys worse. Like I think if anything, they might unlock some of the guys that haven't really hit yet and do that. Like you mentioned Mookum, right? About him being excited about Mookum and stuff like that. So,
yeah. All right. Next question. I don't know. The guy said, apparently Jacoby Lane said that some kid stole a bunch of stuff from his locker while he was there on a visit. And the guy wanted to know, how much would you steal on a recruiting? I wouldn't steal anything, man. You have no chance of ever being invited back if you do that. I think that's the stupidest thing in the world. And I don't know why anybody would do that. All right, next question. After holding out Greathouse for the last 8 games, was this because they were being cautious for the playoffs, or was it Jaden thinking about transferring and didn't want to lose a year if he did? Also, will they limit him this spring? I think he's going to be full go this spring. I think it was just let's make sure he's 100% ready to go for the playoffs. They didn't need him at the end of the year. They really didn't. And so there was no point in bringing him back. And I also think that it gave him an opportunity to save it in case that's what he wanted to do. I think that was a smart thing for Notre Dame, saying, hey, look, we're not going to put you in there to preserve this in case this is something you're thinking about. But I don't think that there was ever really any strong discussion that that's what he was going to do. I do think he was injured. And, Jamie, those are hard to overcome in the season. It just is. We've seen it happen with countless guys where you get an injury like that, and
early, and
and then they're never the same. They're never the same. They're done for the entire year that way. So I think that that's what it had to do with more than anything. This is another interesting question. If you were called into a meeting with Marcus Freeman as a player, as Joey O'Brien recently was, would you dare take a piece of the candy and start eating it in front of him? Would anyone do that? It would be such a power move. But, if I'm Joey O'Brien, I'm not doing that. If I'm Drake Bowen, hell yeah, I'm eating that candy. You know what I mean? That's just a way to look at it. But if you're Joey O'Brien, I had to laugh at that video. I thought that was pretty funny. I love that Marcus did it that way. But you got to know Joey was like thinking the whole way, man, what did I do? Did I screw up? Did I screw this up? I don't remember doing anything. Yeah. Did I say something in lifting? Did I anger one of my teammates? What did I do? I thought it was pretty funny. Go ahead.
I thought that was pretty funny too. Actually, I like that. That's a good move. It was a good move by Marcus Freeman. If you're like, Leonard Moore, Drake Bowen, KVA, guys have been around for a long time. You got a long relationship with Coach Freeman. Yeah. Okay. You can grab the candy. You're okay. But even those guys might not feel good about it. But I think maybe a couple of them would.
I think Marcus, when you earn his respect, he's okay with you giving him a hard time. That's just kind of the way he is.
If I was a freshman, no way.
Absolutely not. And if my son did, I'd be mad at him for doing it. It's like, what are you doing, you idiot? So I thought Joey O'Brien handled that perfectly. And you could just tell there's already a special bond between those two. And Marcus thinks the world of him, and he's, going to be a talented player. And we all know that. But I think it's wonderful that Notre Dame is doing that. That's the kind of thing that Notre Dame needs to do more of, is show Marcus Freeman for who he really is. And that's really who Marcus Freeman is in those moments. And I realize the Here Come the Irish special that's on Peacock, that's part of the deal with Peacock, and Peacock's got to get their money out of it. But it would be nice if after a certain amount of time that stuff would go free, because that's what you want the rest of the world to see. That's who Marcus Freeman really is. and who we think Marcus Freeman is based off of interviews and press conferences is validified and more strongly presented in the Here Comes the Irish stuff. It just, yeah, when you see that, and I hate paying for Peacock because I think it's terrible that we have to do that, but it's going to get worse. We're going to be paying for more and more as this goes along. But I do think it hurts Notre Dame that they can't get that product out there, because that's the thing that's going to sell Marcus Freeman. And of course, he's going to do that in his meetings with people, but it's kind of like we discussed when kids come on campus. They want to see how you are in the room when you're actually coaching, not the, hi, I'm Marcus Freeman representative here to sell you something. This is Marcus Freeman and who I am. So I love the fact that Notre Dame does that. I hope that they continue to do that more and more, because I think that that's one of Notre Dame's biggest selling points, is when he has the opportunity to show who he really is. And it's exciting. I would love to play for Marcus Freeman if I were a player. I would love to play. I would choose to play for Marcus Freeman, and not just because I'm an Irish fan, just because I like him as a person. I think he's extremely genuine. And if I were a coach of a high school player, if I were a parent, or even the actual player, I'd be extremely impressed with Marcus Freeman. Final thoughts on that, and we'll call it good.
Oh yeah, like, I mean, he'd be a guy you want to play for. I think one of the things too that probably doesn't get talked about enough with the whole Peacock series, and even going back to when, Marcus Freeman was first announced as head coach, and the reaction of in the locker room and all that, is like just having those clips like exist that show those, like, you never see any of those clips where Marcus Freeman isn't someone who played football or coaches football, or who's young and is like wants to get to play college football, who watch those and says like, man, I don't want to play for Marcus Freeman. Like every single one of those clips, because everything from the way he like handles adversity to the way that, he motivates and all that. And I think that is probably one of why some of these NFL teams see that too. And they're like, yeah, this is a guy that could lead these men and all that too. And just like a bit random, but I don't know, some Notre Dame fans won't like this, but I was on the sidelines, like on the field before a game against the San Francisco 49ers and Seattle Seahawks back in the day when my cousin was working with the 49ers. And, Pete Carroll was out there throwing passes. And I say to one of my cousin's friends, who's like a former NFL player and whatever, he's a broadcaster in Canada right now. I was saying to him, I just, I can't stand Pete Carroll. Just look at this guy out here throwing passes. Like, get out of here, man. Like, I just, obviously, there's a lot of bias going against Pete.
Sure, absolutely.
All the years of him just whooping Notre Dame, right?
Oh.
And then he
tortured.
Called my friend, my cousin's friend, he called me out and he was like, tell me you wouldn't want to play for Pete Carroll. And he's like, look at every single one of these guys. And he talks about competition and how all of these guys want to play for him, and all these guys play for that level. And it's like, like, it's true. Like you would. Yeah. And that is part of the reason why they went up. And it's like, so you could still feel a certain way about him because he was a USC guy and all that. But it's like, I don't know necessarily, like Jim Harbaugh, I respect that he's won, but I don't know if I'd want to play for him or coach for him or work for him or anything like that.
That's a coach. That's what I was just going to mention. I think it's also, when you get that out there, coaches are like, oh, I could go work for this guy. He's not, and the fact that they show so much of him, I think is something you mentioned. And I agree with you about Pete. And I'll go one further, and this will shock Irish fans even more. I think it would have been fun as hell to play for Jimmy Johnson. I really do. I think it would have been a blast to play for Jimmy Johnson. I wouldn't have gone because I'm a Notre Dame fan, but I could understand why all those Florida kids went there. That would have been a whole lot of fun to play for that guy. And it's a looseness, but an intensity at the same time. They play with this kind of looseness, and everybody's kind of happy and blah, blah, blah. but there's also this intensity, like right when the game is on, we're now's the time to turn up the intensity. And I think Pete did that well. I think Jimmy does that well. And I really think Marcus does it well too. And that's one of the things that makes them special coaches. So, all right, folks, that's going to be it. Hope you enjoyed that. Next week, we will be back. We'll be talking defensive back and linebacker and getting ready for it. And then the following week, I'm going to try and get my buddy Christian McCullum on. And the three of us will talk some recruiting. And so that's what we're looking for the next couple of weeks of Power Hour. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week, and have a good week.